All right, I'm here with Craig Demaree, uh, good friend and our revival speaker from January. I'm happy to have you here, Craig. And yeah, how are you?
I'm doing well, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Great, great. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about your talk. You did an amazing talk at our January revival. Just kind of wanted to, hear a little bit more about that and let other folks know some of the things that you discussed a bit. And you certainly, um, have been through a traumatic experience and having lost Parker.
Yeah, and I mean that was kind of one of the central themes. Men and women are a little different, and when it comes to grief and that, we're as men we're really the rocks for our wives many times, and then we do need people outside of our marriage to help us with that. With that grieving process, and it's nice to have a group of guys that can step in the gap for you and help you out. Um,
Did you feel like you were surrounded uh, well through that process, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. So there's a lot of friends that can do that. I would say the one piece of it that's a little more difficult is that you truly feel like no one else understands because you didn't know anyone else that went through it. And so my wife did a really amazing thing. She decided to create a group of folks and have different weekend retreats around that so that others can see that, as sad as hard it is to lose a child, that you're not alone. And that's as weird as that might sound, it's a little bit comforting to know that someone else understands what you're going through, even though unfortunately they've been through a very very painful event.
Yeah, and so um, what other things did you learn through this? You said something about men and women responding differently, maybe.
Hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just women. So they're obviously they tend to take on a lot of it internally as if it was their fault, and we know it's not. Because they carry the child, and so that's one thing that you have to kind of walk through and understand. The other thing is, ordinarily when something bad happens to us, we do have someone to blame. If we get in a car wreck, it's the driver behind us. It's their fault that we got hit. Whereas here, you really don't have anyone to blame. So a lot of people blame themselves, especially the mothers, and then other people tend to blame God because there's no one else, right? And so you just got to understand that that's the nature of it, and that it's not always fair to blame yourself or others. It's just sometimes things happen, and it's unfortunate, but it does happen.
Wow, wow, and I know that you guys kind of responded in a certain way, and tell us about the weekends that you had going a little bit.
Yeah. So, and this is really my wife's kind of idea, and she did a wonderful job, and she's really good at organizing stuff and fulfilling a vision. And so she would have weekend retreats, and we have speakers all weekend, and it was a time for community. So it was a community of those that have lost. Most of them, I will say, were pretty recent. There were a couple that were over 20 years since they lost their child, and so
Wow.
it was. And we did kind of specifically narrow it down to infant mortality because that's what we know. Obviously, we know there's different types or different situations, but we kind of were very specific in that. And it was just a powerful weekend for community. Is probably the best way to say it. And people went away knowing, okay, you know what, I'm not alone. And we had different groups, so we would at one point we put all the men together, we put all the women together, and when I sat there and listened to all the other men talk, I, it was as if I was talking, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff is very similar that people go through. And it was nice to be able to normalize it a little bit.
Yeah, I remember you saying, Craig, that one of the big things was to not forget, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I mean, and that's something
what do
you'll,
you do, what do you do to not forget?
yeah. So I mean, that's something you'll always take with you. For me, so my son Parker was born in May 1st, 2008, died a few days later in 2008. My son Grant was born 11 months later in 2009. Then my daughter was born, Alexis was July 6th of 2011. So shortly after that, in 2011, I probably did a lot of things, and that's really where when all this started, was kind of years later. For me, I started, and it's a long story how I got there, but I started officiating football because it was a time away from the grief. It was a time away from the cell phone. It was kind of a time away from everything. Even though, every now and again a coach may yell at you, it was just kind of like just time away, right? Just me. And then it became kind of me and him time. So that's really, I just kept wanting to go back. And so that's how I've continued it since 2011 through today. And my wife has gotten me a dog tag that I only wear at football games, and it has an imprint of his hand and his feet on it. So, and that's an actual imprint, just smaller, that we got from the hospital that they sent us. And so it was really nice. So that's kind of one of those things where, and before I leave, I send my wife a quick text. I just said, hey, it's, just me and him. And then we leave the locker room, we go on the field. So yeah, so that's kind of why I do it. And it's just, it's just that time to do it. Just him and I, we're out there, and it's a good time.
That's really awesome. That's really awesome, Craig. And I just want to thank you for being our revival speaker. Also want to thank you for having invited me to be in your small group, years and years ago, which has been a huge blessing in my life. So, yeah, just really appreciate you and all the things you're involved in a second, and how you're just a great leader and disciple. And so, yeah. I want to let folks know that our February revival speaker will be Kevin Lewis. So that's on February 21st. So stay tuned for that. Hope to see you at Revival.